Okay, now I really want to know what these equate to on the Monopoly theology equivalency spectrum. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. As part of my coverage of the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival, today I'm going to be talking about the 2024 psychological horror thriller, Heretic, which will be released in theaters on November 8th. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Heretic stars Hugh, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East, and was co-directed by Beck and Bryan. It tells the story of two young Mormon missionaries who find that their latest convert attempt is a bit more dangerous than they ever expected. There's no doubt that there's something extremely satisfying about a movie giving you exactly what you expect it to. The story, the entertainment, the thrills. Some people prefer mystery and spontaneity when it comes to movies, but I imagine most people go to the movies hoping to have their expectations met. In fact, the alternative is generally a disappointing experience. I think we've all been in that situation before, going to a movie expecting one thing, only to find out it's something very different. But there's an interesting nuance to this when it comes to film. Meeting or not meeting your expectations aren't the only two options. A movie can also defy your expectations, giving you something different but better than what you expected. And Heretic is a movie that definitely defied my expectations. I hadn't seen the trailer when I saw this film at TIFF, but I was expecting a fairly traditional religious horror movie. And now having since seen the trailers, I think most people going to see this film will also have those same expectations. But the trailers and the marketing don't really do this film justice, or fully advertise what this movie is. And so Heretic defies expectations. It defies its marketing. It defies a lot of things. This movie was my favorite horror film at TIFF this year, which is certainly saying something given the other movies on the program. At its core, Heretic is a cerebral and surprisingly thought-provoking game of cat and mouse, with the mice caught in an elaborate trap of the cat's construction. It's extremely tense and often creepy, but it's also darkly hilarious at times. This is a very wordy, dialogue-driven horror film that offers up both unsettling psychological mind games and playful discussion of its themes, especially during the first half. This screenplay is probably one of my favorites of the year. It delivers lots of good dialogue, obviously, but pairs it with a clever story that's as compelling as its themes. This movie uses its chills as an excuse to examine human nature. Yes, it's about religion, but more so, this is a story about faith. About belief versus disbelief, about how we decide on what and who to believe, about questioning things versus blind faith, about piecing things together to figure the truth out for ourselves. Heretic's screenplay approaches these ideas intellectually, and is perhaps inherently divisive as a result, but it's really interesting to listen to the points made by both sides in this tense conversation, especially when nested within such a clever and intriguing story. I know I've been saying it a lot lately, but a good screenplay does not guarantee a good movie. You could have the best written script ever, but if that strength doesn't make the jump to screen, it's all for naught. And so especially with a dialogue-heavy movie like this, the performances can make or break a film. Luckily, they make Heretic. This is really a three-character film. We follow the victims of the story, two young Mormon missionaries played by Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East. Sisters, Barnes and Paxton, are quite different from one another and initially make for an unusual pair. The film sets these characters up in a way that'll convince you that you've got them figured out, and you sort of will, but you also won't. These characters are smarter than you'd anticipate in a horror movie like this, which makes them easy to root for. On the other side, we've got Hugh as Mr. Reed. He uses that familiar, well-practiced charm from decades of rom-coms, but tweaks it just enough to give it a threatening and sinister edge. He absolutely oozes creepy charm here, delivering Monopoly monologues and Radiohead renditions with eerie magnetism. Grant makes an excellent villain, but it's his tense and unsettling badinage with Thatcher and East that elevates the film. Although Heretic is a very dialogue-heavy film, I should note that it's not exclusively verbose. There's certainly a large psychological component to the film, but it also offers up some satisfying scares that are a bit more traditional for this type of movie. Certain plot elements in the third act are a bit elaborate, and there's definitely a moment that many horror fans will likely roll their eyes at, but this movie's shift towards conventionalism offers a nice release for all that built-up tension, while simultaneously doubling down on its own messages regarding the iterative nature of human creations. Heretic isn't over the top with its scares or religious horror elements, unlike what many people will expect, especially given the trailers. But that certainly doesn't prevent it from being a satisfying horror film. This is a creepy and intellectual chamber piece. It's unlikely to change anybody's pre-established beliefs, nor does it set out to do so, but it will leave you thought-provoked and thoroughly entertained. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number 1 is the screenplay. This just hits all the right horror movie buttons for me. It's thought-provoking, with some really strong and thematically driven dialogue, but manages to also be both creepy and fun. It's a tense, dread-building film, but it's also weirdly playful in this dark and unsettling kind of way. The whole thing is just cleverly written, and really satisfying in a way that's slightly atypical for a religious horror thriller. It presents a lot of points that are interesting to think about, but also chilling in the context of the story. The second pro has got to be the performances. The standout here is definitely Hugh Grant as the mysterious Mr. Reed. It's not often that we see Grant take on a villainous role, and never in a horror film like this, but he's able to take his typical rom-com charm and magnetism and twist them into something threatening and sinister here. He oozes creepy charm, but that wouldn't be nearly as effective without an equally strong performance to play against. And here, he gets two. Sophie, Thatcher, and Chloe East more than hold their own performance-wise, portraying a pair of smart characters with a few surprises up their sleeves, especially for those expecting a more traditional horror film. On the con side, my only issues are just minor nitpicks. This is a very wordy, dialogue-driven film, which I recognize is not something all horror fans will enjoy. But for me, these lengthy, intense discussion scenes are where the film excels. And so, when the movie drifts into slightly more traditional horror movie territory, it dips a little bit. And certain aspects of this are pretty elaborate, which is fun, but maybe goes a few steps too far if you're looking for something that stays within the realm of feasible believability. Personally, this didn't bother me too much, but I was already on board with this movie, so I can easily see this being a bigger issue for people who aren't with the movie from the start. Before I give you my rating recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Heretic or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy as one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Heretic 4.5 out of 5 paws, simmering up a half a paw in the time since I watched the film at TIFF. Hugh Grant absolutely oozes creepy charm here. Equal parts profound, playful, and perturbing, this clever and well-written horror thriller explores religion, belief, and the iterative nature of human constructs. I would recommend Heretic to anybody looking for a creepy but thought-provoking horror thriller. It's largely dialogue-driven, offering up a great mix of psychological tension and dark humor, not to mention a standout performance by Hugh Grant. I should note, though, that if you're looking for a traditionally scary religious horror film, or a movie that delivers slightly more conventional, action-intensive thrills, you might be a bit bored or underwhelmed by the more cerebral approach here. If you liked Heretic, I would recommend Barbarian. The surprises these two movies have in store are different, but Barbarian is another tense horror thriller that digs into deeply thematic territory. It's a more overtly scary film, but there's a good chance this will be another movie that'll defy your expectations. If you'd like another stylish and darkly comedic thriller, you should watch The Menu. This is another thematically driven film with a strong screenplay and even stronger performances, this time by Ralph Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy. And if you'd prefer to stick with creepy, captive horror, you'll want to check out Saw. This franchise got progressively more over the top and gory as it went on, but the original film is an unsettling psychological horror that's as thought-provoking as it is creepy. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Heretic? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite villain performance by an actor not typically known for playing the villain? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.